swords.
Take this time to consider your past deeds.
Stop asking questions. You had your chance. Let the games begin.
Well met, visionaries, what's hanging? We're Velen's chosen podcast, a podcast geared to buff the game of the budget players and the limited collection people out there. We're here to help you guys stay competitive on the ladder, learn a little bit more about standard before it goes up, and end your ladder seasons just a little bit higher than the last. Joining me today, we have the one, the only female host, Evemartyn. What's up?
Female host. Hi,
one
everybody.
on this show.
The one on this show. And then we have your usual PogChamp extraordinaire, Andrew Brown.
I don't know what this is, but when you said PogChamp, it made me think of
PogChamp gang signs, I guess.
I don't know, something like that.
And yet again, we have our recurring guest, Joe Hamboy Williams. What's up?
How's it going?
Our legendary consult.
Yeah, the legendary consultation that we have most of the weeks
Real.
on this show. So,
Can I ask something?
go ahead.
When you say PogChamp, are you talking about those the circular discs that people would like
Oh,
No,
flip? Is that
I
way
wonder if
too
that's
old?
where it come from.
I don't know. There's
You know
an
the little
emote in the
buttons,
chat.
People would like whack them.
It's the emote in the chat where the guy's just like sideways and goes like this.
That's
RobMay.
PogChamp.
Yeah, that's Rob Champ right there.
Oh boy.
Okay, that's too obscure for
Type
me.
in to get right.
Hey, I just really want us to get a sub button so I can make Rob Champ for a thing. That would be hilarious. And then we can do one for all of us.
$5 to subscribe.
All right, so today's topics, just real quick, we have a really interesting deck that's been cycling around. I think it was shown at preliminaries a little bit. It's called the Omeletidin, or basically Egg Pally.
Omelet?
Yeah,
Omeletidin?
Omeletidin. And Joe has made a budget version that's a little bit different and said he played 24 games on it. So we're going to talk about that today for our discount deck of the week. And then we're going to talk about Hearthstone deck trackers today since, we have nothing else to talk about. So let's talk about tracking. And then we have a little bit of a news announcement that's very small about what's happening with Standard and just a few cards that are not going to be in Standard. So let's jump right into the discount deck of the week.
What a contraption!
Isn't she scrumptious? She's my revolutionary, non-pollutionary mechanical wonder.
All right, take us away, Joe.
All right, so basically this came about, it's an Egg Paladin, as Rob mentioned. It basically came about on the last day of the season. I was playing Secret Paladin because I'm a scumbag, I guess. And one of my friends told me that the Egg Paladin version, there's like an egg version with like Mysterious Challenger. He's like, yeah, that version's way better. You should play that. And I told him he was wrong. So the second season ended, I had to find out if I was right. So I made this. But Mysterious Challenger is boring and things like that are boring. So I kind of made like aggro Paladin with eggs in it. And it actually worked out pretty well for me. It's the only deck I've actually won games with this season. So I'll run through the list. And then if you guys have questions, I can answer those. And I'll like go through like why cards are in there and how you win games with it and all of that.
Sure, and I'm going to link it in the chat for those of you for the live show. It's right there.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have double Avenge, double Abusive Sergeant, double Dragon Egg, one Ironbeak Owl, double Knife Juggler, Mad Scientist, Nerubian Egg, Shielded Minibot, Divine Favor, Muster for Battle, Argent Horse Rider, one Shattered Sun Cleric, two Blessing of Kings, two Defender of Argus, a Gormok, but you probably don't want to put that in there if you're a budget player. You can use Dark Iron Dwarf. It was actually better in testing, but Gormok is more fun. And then two Keeper of Uldamon and one Lotheb. So in terms of like expensive cards, only like actually expensive cards in this deck all come from the Nax set.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have Nax, which I believe is like your guys' like number one recommendation for things to buy, or it was.
So anyone
For
who
a
took
while,
our
yeah.
advice, yes, they have Nax.
So if you've listened to my lovely co-hosts, then you have Nax, then you should have everything you need to make this deck. I think the total dust cost for everything not Nax is like 1,000 dust or something.
Huh.
So
It's very doable.
Pretty
if
good.
you guys have any questions at the start, you just look at the list and something doesn't make sense.
Okay, so
So how
what
do you
are
win,
your
right?
key?
Sorry, Eve, you were saying something.
What are your key? What is the word I'm looking for to make
Cards?
the eggs work?
Win conditions?
Yeah.
Activate.
So
Activators?
Activators. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Key
um,
activators for the eggs.
you have Abusive Sergeant, which is it's better with New Ruby and Egg than it is with Dragon Egg, but it gets
Yeah.
the job done for Dragon Egg. Avenge works. Keeper of Oldemon works. Sun Cleric works. Blessing of Kings works. Defender of Argus works. And
So
if you put a Dark
tons
Iron
of
Dwarf in, that works as
Yeah,
well.
you have lots of
So you have
options.
quite a few.
And then if you're
Okay,
not
good.
running
Like Blessing of
Gormok,
Kings
you
on
have another
Dragon
one,
Egg is
right?
just nutty because you can get like 3 or 4 2/1s a lot of the time.
Oh my gosh.
And then the problem with Blessing of Kings on Ruby and Egg is if they don't have a silence, then it's like the worst minion to deal with ever. Because you have to remove a 4-attack minion, you can't leave it there, but when you do, it just pops out another one.
Yeah.
It's kind of inconvenient.
That's scary. You get a 4/6
Yeah, it's not a good time.
for 6 mana is pretty
Um,
scary. And actually, it wouldn't even be a 4/6 if they can't silence it, right? It would be an 8/10 because of the cycle. Once it dies, it comes back as a 4/4.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Jeez.
I know you gotta have more than one egg in order for it to be called an omelet deck, but talk to us about Dragon Egg, because I don't think that's used in any other kinds of decks
Right.
other than this. How is it effective? How do you get the value out of it?
Yeah, Dragon Egg, like I said, Blessing of Kings is probably the best value you get on it, just because, like, if you get, like, more than 1/2/1 or something, it's, like, mathematically, I think it works out. And just, like, playing with the number of, like, Zoo decks and Paladin decks, things like that, like, playing that into their Knife Juggler is just kind of a nightmare for them, because you can't really, like, play any minions with Knife Juggler on board, because they just give you a bunch of 2/1s.
Right, and the egg too can be New Ruby and Egg can be set off by their Knife Juggler accidentally as well.
Yeah, they're both like really nice, like anti, like board clear, anti Knife Juggler, anti just like cheese cards, I guess.
Mhm.
Which helps in this deck because you just kind of throw everything you can onto the board.
Yeah,
when
because you
have
got the
cards like
Divine
Ruby
Favors
Egg,
to
it's hard
refill
get
you.
cleared out.
Yeah, the Paladins are just sitting on their Consecrate going, I don't want to use this.
Okay,
You're just
so
gonna make the board.
Eve, you brought up a great piece of this deck, right? What's missing from the deck, and it has a very specific reason. I was talking with Joe a little bit about this before we even got on the live stream, but there's some key cards that we're not missing here, or that we are missing here. We're missing Consecrates, missing Seal of Champions, which I've seen in a couple egg lists, and then they're also missing a True Silver. And what was the other one we talked about, Joe? Was that it?
I mean,
Consecrate,
Haunted Creeper could probably
Haunted
be in this
Creeper.
deck.
Yeah, that was the other one.
You can probably cut like Scientists and Avenge for like Creeper and something else. But I
I
tried
really
that
like the
today on ladder and
Avenges.
it didn't actually work that well. So I'm not sure. But Haunted Creeper would definitely find a spot. But a Seal of Champions I don't like. Because you put Seal of Champions on a Dragon Egg and it doesn't, like when you attack, it doesn't actually activate the Dragon
Yeah,
Egg.
it doesn't take the damage, so it doesn't activate.
Doesn't take
Mhm.
damage. And then they normally just deal 2 damage to it and it dies. And you've paid, like, Seal of Champions is kind of expensive for what it does. Sometimes you get really good value, but the fact that you don't get a health buff means, like, once the Divine Shield's gone, it's like a really bad Blessing of Might. And, like, nobody plays Blessing of Might.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Okay.
True Silver Champion is more of like it's kind of like a slower board control card. Like, all the 4-mana cards in this deck are cards you need in over True Silver, and you really can't afford to run any more 4-mana cards,
Right.
or you're just too slow. Like, if you don't get bored in the first few turns, you lose the game every time.
Mm-hmm.
And True Silver just doesn't quite do that. Like, if you look at all the 4-drops, they're all, like, meant to buff things already on the board.
I
Now,
like
maybe
Keeper of
there-
Oldemon.
Is there
I
any
really
logic
like that.
for an Argent Squire, like the 1-drop 1/1 Divine Shield?
I actually was trying that today on ladder. I took out the Avenges and the Scientists and put in Ardent Squires. I think it's okay. It's like, again, it's more stuff to buff, but you take out Avenge and you lose a buff.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of
kind of-
50-50.
I mean,
you
at
could probably run
3-2 for
Ardent
one-
Squires if you wanted another 1-drop.
Andrew, what were you saying?
Well, 3/2 for 1 mana is just such good value, especially when this is you got to buff your little guys and get
Mhm.
them crushing. You know.
Yeah.
I've got a question because I've been confused when I when I buff a Dragon Egg, whether that's through Avenge or Guardian of Kings, do I go face and let him deal with it and give me the little dragons, or am I trying to trade as much as possible to get a board full of 2/1s?
I usually trade almost every time. Occasionally you go face if you can like pressure lethal, or if they have taunt and you think like it's going to be hard for him to trade anyway. But if you can trade in a way where you'll create like more 2/1s than he would create if you traded, then you should probably go for it. Against decks like Warrior, maybe you don't want to just because they can clear the 2/1s quite easily with whirlwind effects. But against like decks like Druid, you definitely just want to start cranking out as much stuff on the board as possible. If you can force them to swipe basically a Dragon Egg and like 2 of its spawns, they spent a 4-mana card to deal with like a 1-mana card or a portion of it. And that's just huge.
Which is good.
Yeah, so
We're winning
would you
at
say
that
that this plays a lot more like a zoo list
Yeah. Who
than
was
an
it?
aggro?
The person who played this at prelims, I think, called it like a zoo paladin deck. And then, well, they played probably a much different version. I didn't even like look for their list.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is the same. It plays the same as like Zoo Warlock. You just get the board, take like super value trades, and then just kind of snowball it.
Yeah.
And they don't really have a way to deal with your board, and you kill them.
So you don't really have any heavy end game. It's just a lot of minions, too much to handle, and eventually win through.
Yeah. Yeah, the Lothab's just in here as a 5-drop just because it protects your board so well.
Mm-hmm.
In scenarios where maybe you've already popped your eggs, you
And
don't
the
really
freeze
have any,
mage
like, death
matchup.
rattles or divine shields to sort of protect your board. Lothab does a really good job of that.
I can see it working
I
out for
played
the
freeze mage twice, and I won both of them. The only way I won was because I had Lothab.
Yeah. Any other questions,
what was your
guys?
win rate?
I went 17-7, I think.
Very good.
But that was I started just on day 1 at rank 16, and then I went from like 16 to 12 with it. I think my first like 10 games I was like 8-2 or 9-1 or something. I kind of evened out after that.
I think anything that's a little bit different is gonna confuse people at this stage because they're so used to a certain amount of decks, just seeing them over and over and over again. So anytime you change things up a little, it takes a bit for people to register that this is something different and then to start playing against it. So
yeah, especially when you get like the turn 2 minibot, turn 3 muster, they just think, oh, it's Secret Paladin. And then you play like a Defender of Argus or something that you wouldn't play in Secret Paladin, and they're just kind of confused and they don't really know what to do. And they won't sometimes play around things like Divine Favor, or they won't be prepared to deal with things like Egg, and they'll blow a silence on a minibot, and then you just play an Egg and throw a Blessing of Kings on it, and they just can't deal with it.
Yep. So I did some quick number crunching for those of you in the chat. You've already seen this, but that's a 70.83% win rate if you go 17-7 with that, Joe. So
Which I
that's
guess is
pretty
all right.
insane. I mean, if you're trying to go for top 100, it'll work, right?
I mean, not last season it wouldn't have. That's a whole nother thing.
I got one other card that seemed to be missing from this was Bran. You got a lot of battle cry minions. What do you think?
Bran is another card that's like kind of slow. Zoo Warlock compensates by like being able to tap and draw cards. But even in Zoo, a lot of times Bran sits in your hand to like turn 7 or 8. And in a deck where your only draw engine is Divine Favor, I don't think you can really rely on it. Like it's really nice to get like a 4-attack buff from Abusive or the double Argus. But I don't think I saw really that many scenarios where I would have been able to actually pull it off. I would have mostly just been playing Bran on curve. And you don't want to play Bran on curve. It's pretty understated to just play on curve.
well, he could be a silence. What do you call it when you're trying to bait out silence?
Silence bait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or bait out removal.
The thing is, like, I know I don't ever silence Bran. The most value you ever get out of it is Defender of Argus. And while it's like somewhat decent value, it's not enough to blow a silence on, especially against a Paladin where they might be worried about Tyrion or just Divine Shield or Blessing of Kings. Like turn 2 is the only time you really see like the tempo owl into minibot. It's very rare that they play like an off curve owl on 3 into a Bran.
Okay, so
Most
the last
decks
thing
have,
you
like,
have
something else.
here in the list was the potential to include a cog hammer, a single of instead of the Sun Cleric if you chose to. If you have that epic card, then go for it. And the last was the Mulligan that we'll cover that real quick, and then we'll
Would you
move on.
put Tyrion in? If you had Tyrion, would you put him in?
No, it's
Too slow?
It's too
Okay.
slow.
Comes down too late. You could play a version of this deck with Mysterious Challenger if you have that, but that's like a whole nother thing.
Yeah, that's like a
But
fusion.
that's like the highest. That's like the biggest card I would put in this deck would be like that 6-drop. Maybe you can just throw Dr. Boom in here just because it's Dr. Boom. I didn't try that, but usually you can just put Dr. Boom in literally any deck.
Well, he works too because the 2 boom bots, right? If we're talking about a minion based deck and he brings out the 2 boom bots with him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
so like
usually
you could
some
probably
things
take out
around and you'll get Argus value or Blessing value or something.
Yeah, so you could probably end up taking out the Gormok. Another fun thing that you can try testing, at least early on in the season, is if you have Sea Giants, maybe see what cards you can fit in instead of Dr. Boom if you don't have Dr. Boom or you don't have Gormok. You might consider those.
Okay in this deck. You would just have to run creepers.
Yeah, you would definitely need the creepers.
Probably.
So, good ideas for ways to tweak it.
All right, let's get right into our main section, which is tracking software. All right, so let's talk real quick about what tracking softwares are out there, and then we'll talk about what they do and the benefits of what they are. So the first one is my most recommended one is TrackObot, and then there is Hearthstone Deck Tracker, which is, I think these are the top 2 ones that you're going to see, and then there's another one just called Hearthstone Tracker. I have not seen this one as much, but I did put it in the show notes for you.
How many of these work on Mac?
That is a great question. I believe TrackObot works on Macs. Because TrackObot works in the background of your computer. Yes, it is downloadable for Mac. I just confirmed that. It works in the background of your computer, so as long as it's running, it's like just an extra application. And then to launch the application, it's not something that you can use offline. So it launches you into an online profile, and then online you can select what cards you want to identify. If they show up against your opponent, it actually tracks what cards you played during the scope of the match. And I can't remember, Joe probably knows a little bit more about this one because he's used it. And I think, Andrew, have you used TrackObot before at all?
No, I haven't.
Okay. This one I just really like because it basically is an autopilot tracker. It lets you play Hearthstone the way you normally do without having a crutch of seeing what your opponent's been playing. It gives you in that mindset, like if you're wanting to play in tournaments of like, okay, I played this card, I've played this card, he's played this, what if he plays this, etc. Instead of having that little crutch right there, it's like a Hearthstone tracker or Hearthstone deck tracker. They'll bring up a UI so you can actually like display your deck list, and then it will remove cards from that deck list as you draw them. And it will show you if you have like 1 of or 2 of left. It'll gray out cards you don't have left. And then it will also show you when your opponent plays a secret, it'll have like a little menu pop up and say, here's all the potential secrets it has there. And then if you play, let's say you attack the guy in the face, then it will, if no secret activates, then it will take off like Vaporize for Mage and the armor one. I cannot think today. Ice Barrier. So those 2 will be eliminated from the list. So you see, okay, so it could be Ice Block, it could be Duplicate, it could be Effigy. And then if you attack a minion and the minion does nothing, then it removes the other 2, and then it shows you it can only be, Counterspell, or Ice Block or Spellbender. Okay? So, and the other thing it will also do is it'll even put a number on top of your opponent's cards. This is Hearthstone Deck Tracker, by the way. It'll put a number on the cards and show you what turn they drew that card and how long it's been in their hand. So it's another thing that you can use if you're new to Hearthstone. Hearthstone Deck Tracker is great to just know and play with it, to know what you're supposed to be paying attention to as you're playing. It's super helpful. It's like, oh, he played this card. Oh, he played this card. And then you can start slowly figuring out other things that they're playing, and you can track your stats, which is another big thing that we've talked about in the show before, is tracking stats.
I did try
go
using
ahead.
one once, and it was really the interesting thing about it was it actually got me to think about the game because there were numbers and stats on the screen that I didn't even know what they meant. Like the order of the cards drawn, I saw those numbers on the screen and I was like, what the heck is that? And it took me a while after I started seeing them play. I was like, why would that be important? Oh, wait, if they've been holding onto a card since the very beginning, there's a good chance it's a bomb that I'm going to have to deal with or something like that. So even just installing the software, if you have no clue what's going on, it'll force you to think and force you to kind of find some interesting things that might actually help you become a better player in the process.
I actually had somebody spectate one of my matches, and her Hearthstone tracker was tracking my match that she was spectating.
Yep.
So she said to me, ooh, they've had that card since their mulligan, and it's like turn 8, and they still haven't played that one card, so it's probably Ysera kind of deal. And I was like,
Brawl or
oh my
something.
gosh, this information, like if I had that, it's a really good thing to be like, okay, I'm going to hold on to this card to deal with that big thing that they've been holding on to the entire game.
Yeah, Joe, do you have any additional comments? I'm looking up whether these are Mac enabled for the other ones while you guys are doing
I
that.
used Hearthstone Deck Tracker a lot, especially when I was learning to like get good, I guess you could say. It helps. Like they both mentioned that like knowing what order like they drew their cards and how long cards they've been in their hand is really important. If you watch like really high level players stream, guys like Firebat, they always mention stuff like that. So stuff like it's really important. Being able to keep track of what cards you played and what cards they played is nice, but it's something you should be able to do on your own, I guess.
Right.
When I went to play in prelims, they didn't let us use like any deck tracking software. They didn't even let us use pen and paper. But if you're lazy and you don't want to try to keep track of it in your head, or you
I
don't
think
want
it's
to
a good training mechanism. Like if you have this and you start paying attention to it, then you could be training your brain to keep track of that information. And then once you're in the habit of paying attention to it, then
you
it could be
remove
something
the
you can
crutch.
do on your own.
Yeah.
Stop calling it a crutch.
Okay, we won't call it a crutch. We will call it training wheels. That's probably the best way to put it.
Blizzard
it
has come
helps.
out and
Like
said
training wheels, it
that
helps
they're
a
not
lot.
against this sort of thing. They said any kind of information that you can keep track of if you have a piece of pen and a paper, we're fine with it. So they're not against Hearthstone Tracker or
Yes, this is not confirmed. This is not
applications.
cheating according to Blizzard rules.
Yeah.
This is as close as you can come to basically having your brain automated for you to play Hearthstone, or at least pay attention to Hearthstone.
Yeah, and hopefully once you start paying attention to all these details, it will become second nature. You'll get used to it, and then you can do it on your own.
So let's go back to Tracobot really quick, because some of our listeners are really, really good players, right? And I just really like Tracobot after I've used Hearthstone Deck Tracker for a while, because you don't have to manually input all of your decks, okay? Hearthstone Deck Tracker will do all of those really cool features and stuff that are like the training wheels to help you learn to pay attention to archetypes and what cards they've been playing, and potentially like how long they've been sitting on cards, what secrets, etc. But Tracobot, I'm pulling mine up right now. You go to your Tracobot in the bottom of your like drawer on your Windows computer. I don't know how it works on Mac, but I do know it works for Mac. And you just pull up in your profile online. And what it does is you can go into your settings and set decks up. So as it's monitoring your game, if you say, like, for instance, I want to have this deck not just show up that I won against a priest. I want it to show me that I went against Dragon Priest, or did I run against Control Priest, or in the off chance that I played against an OTK Priest, right? This is probably more valuable with cards or decks like Warlock, where you could be playing against Zoo, Chinese Zoo, Reno. You could be playing against a Malygos list, or whatever. There's so many archetypes, so that's really helpful. So what you do is you just basically create one, and you say, hey, if you see Twilight Whelp, Wormrest Agent, Dragonkin Sorcerer, Twilight Guardian, and a Ysera, or you see any of those cards during that match, then you can identify this deck as being a Dragon Priest deck. So it'll automatically log your games against deck archetypes for you, as well as categorize them in the big picture as the class, okay? And then the other really awesome thing I liked about this was when you go into your history tab, you can sort your history based off of friendly, ranked, and arena matches. And then when you're playing in ranked, it will also further delineate that by telling you what rank you played at. So right now, it shows me my last couple games last season were Zoo Warlock. You played this game at rank 11. You played this game at rank 11, or whatever. So I can see that like the last 20 games were actually right around rank 11 because I kept going up and down, up and down, up and down on the seesaw. So you can see how long you've been pressing this rank and how impressive it's been on your ladder experience. And then it'll tell you win or loss, and you can check your stats, and you can set custom ranges to monitor. So I can say from February 1st to March 1st, I want you to check my win rates, what decks I've played and what decks I played against. And it will even show you the frequency in which you've seen specific decks. And it only breaks it down by classes, but once I click my Warlock class that I played against, it will show me what I played against it and what my win rates were against that deck. Do you guys have any other comments on this? I like running this in the background because it does give you a full win percentage the more you use it overall. So like it tells me in my stats, I've gone when running deck tracker, or I'm sorry, deck Tracobot, I am 330 by 220. So I have a 60% win rate since using Tracobot for any of the games that I've tracked.
Yeah. I think a big thing to keep in mind is that if you're not getting the results that you want, this is going to give you more tools in your belt, basically. So it'll give you more information for what you're doing well at, what you're not doing well at, and at least give you some pointed analysis on what you need to improve in. It may not give you the answer, but it'll give you more information than just hitting your head on the keyboard saying, "Why can't I win?" You'll know exactly which decks you're losing against, which decks you're not doing so well on. It'll just give you more info and help you out.
Absolutely. Joe, what do you like to see when you're looking at stats? I know that you may not necessarily use Hearthstone Deck Tracker a lot anymore, but I mean, we started using this internally with Vicious Syndicates Gaming, and they like to monitor win rates and deck archetypes that they're seeing within our club. And we have an API system where you can send your stats to somebody else, and then they can add all of it in and say, hey, between these 20 players, we at ranks 5 to rank 1, we saw all of these decks over the course of 500 games. So you can like actually analyze a full meta.
I think the most important thing with stats is to realize that until you have like a lot of games, like more than like 1,000 probably, it's probably not that like reflective of how good you are as a player. It's like checking it after every day and being like, oh, I was like 40% today, doesn't mean you suck at the game.
True.
Like, so like being able to like contextualize it and like not just like constantly obsess over it, be like, oh, I went like 45% with Zoo today, I can't play Zoo for the next week. Like they're super valuable, but you have to understand that they only mean so much. And like a lot of like what you mentioned about like having matchups and things like that is a lot more important than just having like your overall win rate. So like try not to buy too much into that. As long as you're getting better at the game, like over time, your general like win rate and things don't actually matter that much.
Sure.
Those are my feelings on, I guess, like stats as a whole. I don't actually like look at my win rates that often or anything. Occasionally at the end of the season I'll post them, or like for things like this I'll record them, but it's not something I really pay that much attention to.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's helpful to you, then use it. But if it's something that starts making you feel depressed and anxious and stressed out when you constantly check it, then it might not be something that you want to use.
Yeah, I think that goes along with what Eve was saying. Is it's a great tool that is in the toolbox available to you. It doesn't mean it's a necessary entity to play the game, obviously, because it's third party. It's not something that Blizzard has said this is what you need. But I will say that this is how Blizzard identifies, like they have their own kind of API tracking software of like, that's way more advanced than this, of what's showing up in the meta, what the win percentages are, if you have this card played on this turn. Like Tracobot will never do that, but Blizzard has their own way of doing this to see how oppressive decks are becoming, how oppressive cards are so they can monitor them, etc. I also included in the show notes, if you guys are listening to the audio portion, there is a how to choose your deck tracker software. It's a little bit of a lengthier article by PC Gamer. They're going to kind of walk you through all of these deck trackers, what they do, etc. Kind of like what we did if you have the time and you want to research them a little bit more. There's a video that I've also included as kind of a more hidden link. We won't spend too much of the episode time on this, but it's a coaching session of a guy that I follow on YouTube that is a professional player about this, probably a little bit worse than Joe because he's repeat legend, but not necessarily top 100, but he does coaching sessions. And one of this session was really helpful on teaching this guy how to play Druid against a aggro shaman. And he was like, okay, so when you play against a deck, you need to have a game plan of reverse engineering against a specific deck. So, for instance, if Eve is playing aggro shaman and I'm playing Druid, her game plan is to kill me as fast as possible with whatever she has. So he, for instance, plays a totem on turn 2. So what are you trying to do in this sense if you have a shade on the board? It's like, well, you can trade with the shade, and it's on turn 4. He has a totem on the field, and you have a shade on the field, and it's your turn 4. So his next turn, turn 5, he can play Doomhammer because he's not overloaded. So if you don't kill this, and you let your shade sit, you're actually letting him do 2, 4 with the Doomhammer and 5 with the totem. Whereas if you hit the totem, he can remove your shade, but you're removing effectively 3 damage from your face overall, even though you're at 30. And the guy was talking like that was getting coached. He's like, well, this isn't that great of a trade for me, and I can do more damage in the late game. And the coach or the pro player was basically telling him, that's not your game plan from the outset. You're trying to reduce the overall amount of damage. His whole deck is burn. So the least that you can remove that from the beginning of the game until the end of the game, you're going to win. And all you have to do is...
You're not going to make it to late game unless you stop me.
Yeah, exactly. You have to make sure that you're stopping
I'm going to kill you by
before
turn
you
6.
get there. It's the same reason. It's kind of the same reasoning when you're driving and you see a stop sign and you start slowing down or coasting into it, and as opposed to waiting for the last like 200 feet and then slamming your brakes on. It's not good for your game plan to go through a stop sign, even though you know you have to stop at some point, right? You need to like slow down and ease into that moment. So you can kind of get away with a little bit more of the greedier plays, was his point at some times, especially if you have more follow-up in your hand. But with this play, yes, you lose your shade, but you overall stop his total damage into your face. And you just never play your Ancient of Lore to draw cards in that matchup. Like, it just doesn't happen. You just heal for 5 because it just screws him over so much. Okay, so I'm going to pass this off now to you guys. What do you guys think about having a game plan that no matter what you're playing, your deck has a certain win condition, right? But overall, what about reverse engineering that? Like playing around what your opponent is playing instead?
Well, to a certain degree, it depends on the deck for me. Because if it's you're up against an aggro deck, like you said, and you're playing a late game deck like a Druid that's waiting for their combo or waiting for their big minions, then you have to do that. You have to play their game for a while until you can get to your game. Because otherwise you're not going to survive to get there. But I also don't like the idea of just playing defensively against somebody else's deck, because you have to try and stay ahead. You have to try and have the more value plays and be in control of the match. So if you're just reacting to what they're doing, that's kind of a negative mindset that could make you lose the game in the end. I mean, you don't really have a choice against like Face Hunter and Aggro Shaman because you have to survive to get to your win condition. But if it's a different kind of matchup where you're both kind of mid-game, then it's like, I want them reacting to me. I want me putting down something every turn that they have to figure out how to deal with, instead of being kind of a step behind them and constantly going, I got to deal with whatever they're putting down.
Andrew?
Andrew?
Andrew, are you there?
Me?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I cut out a little bit. I think you guys have covered it well. I mean, it's a fine line. It depends on what kind of archetype you're playing. If you're control, you're going to be reacting a lot. If you're aggro, you need to be going for it a lot. Mid range, you're trying to flip the board before your opponent does, or actually maybe you're trying to flip it after them because you want them to expend all their resources and then flip it. But you have to know what you're playing in order to know if you should be reacting or not.
Joe?
Yep, I think it's like the two things are important in that scenario. One, you should probably know every deck in your or every card in your opponent's deck and things like that. It makes it easier to like play around things and like realize like, oh, if I unstealth the shade this turn, like this or this could happen, and then knowing if that's bad or good for you. And then the other thing, like playing against decks like Aggro Shaman, you have to basically the idea is like you play defensively, but at some point you do have to win the game. So at some point you have to realize that you're gonna have to try to become the aggressor, unless you're like control warrior, in which case you never have to. But as a deck like Druid, at some point you have to be like, all right, well I have to threaten to kill him before he kills me, so that he has to play defensively. So when you can like turn the game around like that, that's how you beat like aggro decks, when you like put them in a position where they're going to die if they don't clear your board, and then they're not set up to do that, so they just lose the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And always be ready for the surprise ice howl.
Oh my gosh.
Always.
You don't actually have to be ready for the ice cell. It's not
You're a good straight man, Joe.
Oh gosh. All right. Well, I actually realized I just used the news portion for the main topic instead of the main topic. So let's use the main topic soundbite for our news section.
The might of Dalaran has arrived.
Not really. Like, this news is about as slow as a snail on Salt Street.
Whatever.
So,
On Salt Street?
yeah, they
There's
disintegrate
one
with
small
salt.
important thing.
So,
One small important thing.
Andrew, why don't you tell the lovely people at home what's going on in the news?
Yeah, it's a small, but it's important that Standard's not going to include promo or reward cards, which we haven't gotten in a long time. But the biggest piece of that is that Captain's Parrot and Old Murk-Eye are no longer going to be obtained by completing the secret achievement. So in the past, in order to get Old Murk-Eye, you had to have one of each of the Murlocs, and for
From Classic and
Captain's Parrot, you
Basic,
had to
yeah.
have one of each of the parrots, right, from Classic and Basic.
The pirates.
Pirates.
But going forward, once Standard hits, Pirates, sorry. Going forward, once Standard hits, you're only going to be able to craft those cards. So you no longer will be able to obtain them for free, which Captain's Parrot is what rarity? Is it an epic?
Epic.
Yeah, so that's pricey, and Old Murk-Eye's legendary, so that's even pricier. I mean, Captain's Parrot's garbage, but Old Murk-Eye is going to be is used in the Murloc Paladin. So if you have any desire for that, it's time to get all of the Murlocs really fast.
Well, you still
now,
can.
because for
not
me,
any of the new ones though,
I'm-
just the classic Murlocs. You don't have to get the new ones they
Classic
brought
and
out.
Basic, like
Yeah.
we said. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So for me, I'm only missing the Murloc Tidehunter, which you get from leveling up Rogue. So I am probably going to play the snot out of Rogue this week and try and get up there. But
You don't have a level
you will
20
be able to
Rogue?
craft them. Huh? No. Or 20?
Or is it 10?
Oh no, it's much further. I've got a 42, but it's like in the 50 range where you
That's
unlock.
the golden
oh, it's
one.
That's
gold.
golden.
That's golden.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have the golden Murloc or
Well,
Murk-Eye.
you pick yeah. That's the thing is that's another really big thing is you could never get the golden Murk-Eye or a golden Parrot unless you got golden of the classic cards and golden of the basic cards for both sets, and you can only get goldens of the basic cards if you level the characters to 60 or whatever their gate was, and it's really
I think
tough.
it's 60.
Yeah. So I think after you hit level 40 on any hero, everything past that is a neutral card. Everything before that is like all golden cards that are within your class. So Andrew's really going to try to play the crap out of this so that he can get a golden Murk-Eye for free without costing him the 3,200
Oh.
dust later.
Somehow I'm going to make Control Rogue or Unearth Raptor Rogue.
Ice
work.
Howl Rogue.
And I don't I don't think any of them will, but oh well.
Bye, Lightning Ruler.
All right.
So that's really it. Also, Elite Torn Chieftain and Gelbin Mechatork. I guess the golden versions. Those were the only promo ones, right?
Yeah.
Yes. But
Those ones,
the
I
thing
guess,
is,
won't be
those
usable, but whatever.
all
What? No,
of
you
those
couldn't
cards you
get
can't
Elite
play.
Torn Chieftain. You had to craft him.
Yes, you have to craft both of them in regular, but you can't craft them in golden. You only got them as a reward for golden for the first BlizzCon that Hearthstone was released, and Gelbin Mechatork was paying money in
Gotcha.
the closed alpha or closed beta.
Close beta, I think.
So that being said, the next step would be to reiterate Murk-Eye, Captain's Parrot, Elitar and Chieftain, and Gelbin Mechatork. These cards are out of standard as well. So
It's sad that old Murk-Eye, like that's the only one I think.
I think they just want to make sure that they're covering their bases by twofold, right? The first thing is a little bit less important, helping that OTK Murloc Paladin not be a one-turn kill because they hate one-turn kill decks from 30 to
Yeah,
0.
but it's so hard to pull off. Like,
Yeah,
And
but
it
they still
doesn't
hate
need
it.
either.
It doesn't really need it, but I'm just saying, like, this is the style of play that Blizzard's always been going after, even if it's not oppressive. And the next thing was, for me, was actually clarity. Like, what's standard? Well, it's basic, classic, and the most recent 2 years of sets. And the promo collection and the reward selection is not a part of that set, so it's just basic. Like, that it does not apply, so we can't use it.
so going forward, if they make more reward cards, then those are not going to be in standard. So it kind of frees them up to go, we can make this neat, fun reward card, and it's not going to be in standard.
It's correct. It's correct. Okay, you guys ready to go some emails?
Yeah.
So I can call Captain's Parrot one of those.
Let's do it.
You require my assistance?
All right, Eve, you got first one.
Gabriel,
Hype.
thank you for writing us so much. I always have something to say on the show. Hi,
Yep,
guys.
yay.
After not playing as much as I had planned this month, I was worried that I might not be able to make it to my target at rank 8. Luckily, I got a few games in on last night and managed to win against 2 mid-range druids and a secret paladin
Hype.
in a row, getting rank 8 for the first time. Congratulations.
Congrats.
I know it's not much in the greater scheme of things, but for a guy who struggles sometimes to play with work and social commitments, being in the top 5% of players feels amazing. Roll on next season.
That's right, it does. Good job.
All right, good job, Gabe.
Absolutely.
All right, this is a long email. Joe, do you want to read this one?
Yeah, I got it. This is from Matt C. I'm happy to say that after playing since October last year, I finally made the push to rank 10 today. You guys really helped me improve my game, where in the past seasons I finished mostly at rank 14. Your banter let me think fondly about Hearthstone while at work and motivated me to dive deeper into the game. I've linked my Mech Shaman deck list that I used to get there. It didn't get a lot of win streaks, but its win percentage is definitely above 50% since I steadily climb once I learned how to play it. There are a lot of mech decks out there, but this one is current and allows me to tell you and your listeners a noob tip. Mechs are great for beginners. The best part is that you don't care about standard when it comes out. You can continue to play your current deck. And if you save the cards you got from Goblins and Gnomes, I believe they will let you dust them for full value when the switch happens. I'm pretty sure that's not true. Until I
That's
cut
yeah.
into the email.
We'll
almost
discuss it when
positive
the
that
email's done.
They're
I
not
don't
going to let
know.
you. They're not going to let you dust GVG and
For full
value.
full value. I really hope they do, but I don't think that'll happen,
Mhm,
unfortunately. But yeah, he goes on to say, let people enjoy this archetype while it lasts, and dust extras in March. Hopefully, some others can enjoy the mech tribe like I did. So I believe his deck will be in the show notes. Somewhere. I don't see it here.
If you guys want the deck, we'll tweet it out later. But yeah, it was in an email, so I have to like upload it to Imgur and stuff. I will say this: I'll just list the deck really quick for you. 2 Rockbiter, 1 Clockwork Gnome, 1 Cogmaster, or 2 Cogmasters, 2 Crackles, 2 Annoyatrons, 2 Flame Tongues, 2 Mech Warpers, 1 Micro Machine, 2 Zapomatics, 2 Power Mace, 1 Hex, 1 Lightning Storm, 1 Demolisher, 1 Harvest Golem, 1 Spider Tank, 1 Tinkertown Tech, 2 Jeeves, and 2 Shredders, 1 Bloodlust, 1 Doomhammer. So lots of stuff going on with this list. It's kind of like a a little bit more of a budget-friendly version of the old school mech deck from GVG. There's a lot of similarities with this. Congrats on hitting the rank that you hit with this deck. Well done.
Yeah, good.
If you want to, do we want to kind of address like tribes, I guess, real quick? We don't have to go to it in depth, but he does bring up a good point about tribes being helpful for building.
Well, if you want to try out the mech, you better do it fast because we don't know how much longer we have with the mechs. And unless they do Goblins versus Gnomes 2, mechs are going to go the way of Old Yeller very fast here. So,
Old Yeller? Oh.
or Lassie.
Rip Lassie.
What's the
No, I think Old Yeller is more. It's just a sad.
So I'm looking at the deck list again, and I think that there's a good way that you can kind of change some things around. Like, just simply, like, Demolisher doesn't really do anything for you. I think having a second Spider Tank is just better, especially with the Warpers. It's bigger value. I think the Jeeves is an interesting decision for drawing cards now that Ancestral Knowledge is out. You could almost get away with just putting that in instead. But I do understand that as a mech and you want to do that, etc. I really think that in this list, the Doomhammer is nice, but I feel like if you had a second Bloodlust to get you more consistency, it might even
No, you shouldn't even run one Bloodlust. I hate to cut you off, but it's
go for
just like it's so bad.
Well, based off what he's trying to do is lots of sticky minions from the looks of this, and then just burst. I think that's probably what he was trying to do.
I wouldn't play Bloodlust.
I would think if you want to run double Rock Biters, though, you would
the
definitely
Rock Biters
want
are for the Doomhammer and for the Whirling Zappos.
Yeah.
I guess Bloodlust has some Whirling Zap-O-Matic synergy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I mean, I would almost take out the Bloodlust for maybe a Wind Fury, like a single inclusion of a Wind Fury.
No.
And put that on.
It's so expensive. It's 2 mana. Like, how much damage are you actually going to get out of it? Like a 3-attack minion to attack one more time, like 2 damage.
Yeah, but if you can wait and combo that with a Rock Biter, you might be able to get away with something. Looks like we lost Andrew on the live stream. Hang on, I'm going to shift the call a little bit here until we get him back.
But the other stuff you said, like, yeah, I don't like Demolisher. I like Double Spider Tank. For sure. Yeah, Jeeves, I don't know about Jeeves. Like you said, Ancestral Knowledge is a thing. It depends on how it's playing out for you, I guess. If you can empty your hand consistently, then Jeeves is good, but sometimes you can't.
Yeah, there's just a couple extra cards in here that seem to be a little extraneous, like just doesn't have enough stuff, like the Jeeves, the Demolisher, maybe the Harvest Golem, and the Micro Machine just doesn't really make sense to me. I think there's a few other pieces that are just like extra mechs that you kind of threw in. I don't know if you threw them in for a reason, like you don't have another card that you would rather have. That would make sense.
Yeah, so we're talking about tribes, right? And I think we can address it here, not to like take a dump on your deck, but tribes are important in the way that they have synergy. But you also have to realize that some cards, despite being a tribal, aren't good enough to be played in like certain decks. If you look at a lot of dragon decks, there's a lot of dragon cards that don't get played. And the same thing is true of mechs. Well, like synergy is important. Some cards are just better.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to like be able to kind of draw the line, like how much synergy do I need for my deck to work? And then where can I fit in other things?
Sure. Eve, Andrew, do you guys have any extra comments on this before we move to the next?
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see which new mechanics they do with new tribes, because that's kind of the fun of a tribe to me, is that there's a different feel to how the deck plays. You know, with dragons, it's having certain cards in your hand. With Murlocs, it's just flooding the board with all of them. So it'll be interesting to see what new mechanics they come up with. That's all.
Yeah.
Yay.
I'm interested for new camps and stuff. Like if they're going to release this many cards coming up, we don't know how many, but if they're going to release a bunch of new cards, I would like them to do not just a new keyword, but even just new tribes, like maybe even 2 new tribes instead of like 1. It would be really interesting.
You played WoW, right?
Yeah.
So what new tribes would we be looking at? Because I never played WoW, so I have no idea.
They would,
like, what.
okay, so disclaimer, they would obviously need to include, basically, if they were to include 2 tribes, they would have to basically make almost every minion in the set be one of the 2 tribes.
Yeah.
Just to be blunt, like they have to. And then they would have to change existing basic and classic cards to be a part of those tribes. So
Yeah,
with
is
that
there any
being said,
existing cards that would fit? And
that being said, people like elementals. Elementals are a good one that would maybe be a sub-tribe of mage. I can see them doing something like this within each class instead of maybe like one big one for all classes. I can see them doing class tribes. Elemental would be something that they could do for shaman and for mage. So there's that. There is
they've already done that in Warlock with demons,
yeah,
right?
demons, and then they have beasts. This is probably going to be the next thing for druids, potentially, people are saying. And then they also have, obviously, the beast synergy within hunter, so that's another way that they could go. But within paladin, this sounds really weird. Oh, it looks like I disconnected from the stream real quick. Sorry about that. It looks like with paladin and other pieces, we can get this archetype that sounds silly, but it's just humanoid, like, or humans, like just being a figure. So if it's a dude like the paladin's hero power or a SI7 agent, that's a humanoid archetype. They have tons of these in Magic, tons and tons and tons.
I mean, they could do them with every race in the game. Taurens, not gnomes.
Goblins.
What am I thinking? Vol'jin. What is he?
Troll.
Trolls. Stuff like that.
Troll,
Yeah.
orc, yeah, the whole thing.
Has that Warcraft movie come out yet?
That comes out.
No. You would have known.
Because
I think it comes out this month.
when that comes out, they could do a humans versus orcs thing, because that seems to be very much present in that, to be a cross promo thing.
Sure. So we have that.
Sorry I was quiet for a little while. I was researching something just to make sure. On the official site, it says, will the basic and classic cards you update for the Year of the Kraken be disenchanted for full value? And it says, while basic cards can never be crafted or disenchanted, classic cards that have been changed during the review can be disenchanted at their full dust value for a limited time. However, things that go out of wild or out of standard into wild will just be regular dust value.
Yeah. So that's just a confirmation on what we had stated earlier.
Yeah. So if they change a card and make you not want to have it anymore, you're going to be able to
Like
dust
druid
it for
cards.
full value, because they're like, sorry, we're wrecking your card. You can have it back.
Yeah, great
But
example would
anything
be
that just
Savage
goes
Roar.
out of standard into wild will be regular dust value, not full dust value.
Yeah, so Savage Roar and Force of Nature, if they change both cards, Savage Roar is a basic card, you can't DE it, but Force of Nature would be the full value.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we still have. I totally lost my synergy talk on that one. What was the other cards that I was thinking? I mean, they could even do something with within the beasts. They could probably split that up, but I don't really like that. They have the dragons. They could probably do something like dragons and do. What was the other thing I was thinking? Like they could do something with like fish or like sea creatures. They could probably do something like that. They could make the Kraken a sea creature.
Oh, what is that creature in World of Warcraft? Is it the Saghain?
The Naga?
The Naga.
The Naga's another one that they could do. There's a few in the game right now. Yeah.
I'm just hoping it's going to be something that we couldn't even have thought of, like League of Explorers was.
And it probably will be.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Yep.
They're creative. They're too creative.
And a lot of people, we'll just diffuse this right now because I did have somebody ask me this in our Discord server about what did you guys think about the Tavern Brawl and the Auras or the Fates being a thing in Hearthstone? And I just say to that, it was one Tavern Brawl. There's no way that we're going to make any sort of assumption on what's coming with Standard within the 9 days before they start making any sort of announcement to anyone. The Aura's confirmed. Like, that's just, I don't know. I mean, it's a cool idea, sure. It's something that we've talked about on the show. There's field cards that do something like this in Yu-Gi-Oh! That I really liked, and I think it would be something really cool, but, whatever.
I mean,
I think
the
it's almost
joust
too
thing
easy.
was completely out of the blue. Inspire, nobody saw that coming. And the most recent one, help me, what's the phrase?
Discover.
Discover.
Discover. Yes, thank you. Discover was completely out of the blue. So I'm looking forward to something that I couldn't have imagined.
Now, here's something that I'll throw right before we finish to you guys that Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic both do, is that they have not just tribes, like dragons and humans and elves and stuff like that, and elementals, but they actually have a realm where everything fits. So in Yu-Gi-Oh! They have earth, wind, fire, and what's the other element? Earth, wind, fire, water, and then they have dark and light. And then if you switch that to Magic, they have their 5 colors, right? They have red, green, blue, black, and white. So it's the same thing, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Has like a sub-archetype, and then they have the main genre. So like a fire thing. So they could do something like that within Hearthstone, but
I think
I don't think they will.
Classes.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think they do that with classes instead.
Because each thing has a theme. Like Black in Magic the Gathering has a total theme of swamps and doing damage to yourself to do damage to the enemy, and like that whole Black has a feel to it. And Red is like an aggro deck. It's like do damage to the face and fire axe and whatever. Sure. And so each class has its own feeling that way. But something that could be neat to take from Magic the Gathering is their enchantments. The thing where you can put something on the board that affects stays and affects
Yeah,
everything.
that would be the auras or the field magic cards from Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah.
Another thing that
Something
they
like
haven't done would be equipment cards. Like we have buff cards, which are kind of the same thing. But I just like the idea of having a different kind of buff where you're like giving a minion, a non-silenceable like weapon, like they do in Magic.
And then when the minion dies, it comes off and goes back into your hand.
Yeah,
kind of
like the hat. Yeah, but it's silenceable.
That's exactly what it's like.
There was the rumor of like mounts coming with Grand Tournament, and that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But that could be a similar idea also.
Sure.
The only tricky thing is that it gets pretty complicated, and they want it to be so simple that may not happen. But the Explorer's Hat's a perfect example of how they kind of still get around that and make it as simple as they can. Have something similar to it.
Really easy to understand, I think, the way that works. The thing with enchantments is they can't be attacked. Like in Magic the Gathering, you can't attack them like they're a minion, so they would sit on the board unless you had something specific to deal with that was like destroy enchantment or some kind of thing on it where if the opponent does this, then destroy this enchantment. So they would have to fulfill a certain requirement.
Kind of like an epic card.
If they take 5 damage, then this is destroyed, or it comes with a certain amount of turns on it, kind of like a weapon, and then it expires after a certain amount of turns, that kind of thing.
Yeah. All right, Andrew, let's read our last email. I'm going to get out of here.
All right. Jamie S. says, so looks like we have at least one more week here to speculate before our simulation goggles are turned into bifocals. You are super intuitive, Jamie. As whatever news drops on the 9th, we'll focus our theories. And by the way, I like that. I'm super intuitive too. So while we still have that blurry view of the future through freshman year Chem Lab future seeing goggles, one pair free with your crystal ball, what decks would you like to see coming in the future to either format? This applies heavily toward anyone that played a card game before, but even just from a lore aspect, what decks would you like to pop up? For my example, I'll give you guys the idea of Suicide Priest. This is a deck that originated in the black color of Magic, in which you would use your health as a resource to do powerful aggro burn damage to your opponent or gain card advantage or tempo. For example, Necropotence. That's how you.
Yeah.
Necropotence. You don't draw. You take 1 damage. You draw 1 card next turn, or a card that's like a 3/3 for 1. Battlecry, deal 4 damage to your face. We've had a few cards that would make Suicide Priest work, but nothing that linked them together, like Shadow Bomber and Spawn of Shadows.
Yeah.
Found this deck worked pretty well in the recent Tavern Brawl with charge and taunt on every creature. So let's hear it. Show us some of those hopes and dreams to be dashed in a week. Really quick side note, Jamie, I got completely mauled by an aggro priest. So if you really want to make those cards work, go for it. But as far as what could come in the future, I mean, we've talked briefly about it.
I think it's going to be something completely different, but the only thing I've been thinking is just what cards are going to come to make cards that haven't worked as well in the past, like how Secret Paladin came about with Secret Keeper and made some of those classic cards that aren't as viable necessarily going to come into existence. As far as like speculating which ones, I really don't know. But I'm excited to, more than anything, probably to see, Spectral Knight come into the meta, or not Booty Bay Bodyguard, because that card's dead. Gurbashi Berserker, or, just some cards that honestly have fallen off the radar completely, be just super powerful again because of other cards comboing with it or providing a way.
I think Priest is a really good example because they have that card that allows them to change their hero power to make you basically a Shadow Priest. Is a really neat idea. They're probably kind of wary of going too heavily into that because Priest also has the ability to heal themselves a lot. So they would be able to offset these cards that do damage to themselves. In Warlock, the way that a lot of things do damage to themselves, it's like that's the drawback. You get these things, but then your health keeps going down and down. But they don't have really that many ways to heal themselves up, especially since they're losing Healbot now. Mm-hmm. They've just got like Farseer. So that was the offset that made it really dangerous for them to use too many cards that did damage themselves and draw too much with their hero power. But where priests have an ability to heal themselves and heal their minions, it makes it a little more risky. They might become really overpowered if they have a Shadow Priest deck. So, but I think it's an awesome idea. I like the idea.
Joe, do you have any thoughts or projections of stuff you'd like to see even?
I honestly have no idea. I'm like with Andrew, where I don't know what they're gonna. I know I'm probably gonna enjoy it, but I have no idea what they're doing. I was nowhere close on like any ideas for any previous expansions, and I don't expect to be at any point in the future. Just no more mysterious challengers, no more shredders.
I'm so glad that we're under a week away now, because it's felt like torture the past month, but finally it's gonna get really close now.
I could be burned out on Hearthstone and not play as much, but for the sake of our viewers, I mean, give us something to talk about.
Yeah, man. I guess they gave us the reward thing, but so
yeah.
Ice Rager is going to be the new meta.
Confirmed. Charge Rager.
That's what's happening.
Okay.
I wonder if they are just going to drop things that didn't work. Like look at Chi and just be like, that didn't work, and like write it off. Or whether moving forward they're like,
Inspires
we're going to make cards that are going to try and make that work.
I don't know. We'll see.
TGT's also going to go out and be in Wild. So is it worth it to kind of go, let's make cards that make other cards work when those are going to leave?
I'm just glad that that's their job and not mine, because I would have...
Or just kind of write it off and be like, that was a loss, that didn't work. Moving forward,
Yuck.
What are we going to do now? Kind of deal.
The one thing I'll also agree with Jamie on, though, is seeing like new ways to play certain classes, because some of the tools have been there to play like a Shadow Priest, but nothing's been really viable yet.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see. Usually they come out with one tool that shows that they're at least trying. I mean, with LOE for Rogue, they were showing that, okay, we're done with spells. We want to create like a minion-based rogue deck, or give you the tools to figure it out, basically. So they're definitely thinking that way. Whether we see Suicide Priest or not, I think, especially with Druid, we will see something that plays, at least they're trying to give us something that plays differently from how that class has played in the past.
All I want to do is play Black Knight again. That's all I want to do.
Black Knight.
I want to play Black Knight again. That card's so cool.
It's coming.
I think I can predict that a brand new Druid archetype is going to come out of this. That's what they really want. Something that does not rely on combo.
Yeah, they're going to take Druids.
Yeah.
Or Druids can be the new Shaman and be completely not viable at all.
That would be fine with me, because Shaman needs to be amazing and non-aggro.
I'm going to say it right now in the show. They're going to make a new Druid archetype that is worth playing.
Beast
Druid! Forward to something other than combo Druid.
Mounted Raptors for days.
That is my prediction.
Okay, all right. we got to get out of here, guys. So let's get into the thanks and iTunes reviews.
Thank you.
So, Patreon supporters, you guys are awesome. Thank you guys for supporting us so much.
Yay!
John H. from Well Met, you are the man. Brand new Patreon supporter as of last week. Actually, during the show, he supported, so really cool. We have Pratt Tap. Pratt Tap, thank you so much for supporting again. And Gabriel Z. and Garrett S. You guys are great. Big shout out to those guys. We'll keep thanking you as much as we can because you guys rock. But, Eve, why don't you let the people know what our rewards are just on the show real quick? Because I don't think we actually have done this on the show. Like, what do you get if you support us on Patreon, and what are those levels?
Access to our Facebook group
So
at $1.
Yeah, like if
Maybe
you get...
you should do this, Rob. You
Okay.
do this one.
Okay, fine. I'll do this. I just have been talking a lot today, so I'm trying to pass it off. As soon as we get 10 patrons, which we're actually 6 patrons away from getting, we're going to create a custom Facebook group where it's only patrons from the show. So it's kind of like Discord, but this is like very exclusive. This is where you guys can pass around specific deck ideas, support the show. We can talk through anything and everything. You can see when we're online. You can even message us on Facebook. So that's a really cool thing that a lot of people don't have access to. At $5, eventually we would like to start doing some giveaways and raffles at certain level. So we actually have this in our show. Like if we make, I want to say if it reaches $100 a month or $50 a month or something like that, we're going to start doing $10 giveaway raffles every month. So if you're a Patreon supporter at $5 or more, you're going to be automatically entered in that raffle, and we'll randomize it and we'll send one out every month. So really cool stuff coming. But we need more supporters to do these cool stuff. The next thing is $10. This is the big access to the show notes. We're going to give you guys access to show notes before the shows. So as soon as the show ends, I create a new show note tab with fresh stuff. It's basically a skeleton, and you guys can see that filled throughout the week. And we're going to give you abilities to comment on the show notes and say, what do you think about this? And what if we change this to be this? Or here's a link, check this out. Those type of things we can do live on our show notes. And at $50 right now, we might even tweak this down to be lower currency input, or we might give you more stuff at this, but this is limited to 10. Right now, you can guest on the show for the low price of $50 on a month. So like
we'll have you on the show as a guest.
Yeah, right now it's set for annual, but I mean, we could probably flex that if you're the first one there. We can probably get you on the show like quarterly at this rate. I don't care. We'll figure it out.
Why not?
Why not? So yeah, let's do that. That's our Patreon supporters. We love getting them. We will still operate without them. Gosh darn it.
And remember, the whole point of it is to make the show better. All the money we get, we're putting right back into the show. Other than giveaways, which we want to use as just incentives and fun ways to give back.
Absolutely.
To you guys for supporting the show.
For being awesome people that you are, even if you're not a Patreon supporter. All right, so awesome. Let's talk about our second favorite people, which are our iTunes reviewers. So, Andrew, why don't you read this one?
Yeah. Maced Matt. I cannot figure that one out.
It was supposed to be Master Matt.
Master
Matt.
Yeah.
It's Master Matt. He said the buff is real. As a newer Hearthstone player, this podcast is perfect. It really helps to hear from those who haven't hit Legend yet and are trying to get hired just like you. Not only are their deck lists helpful for new players, their commentary and substitution suggestions have helped me buff my game. Just got ranked 10 for the first time. Thanks, Velen, chosen the podcast I choose every time. Aww.
So precious.
You see what he did there? You see what he did there?
Yes.
Valen's chosen and he chooses. That's good.
I choose you, Master Matt. I don't want Pikachu.
So just a reminder, iTunes reviews are the fastest and easiest way. I know there are lots of podcasts I listened to for a while. I was thinking, man, I really need to do that. It seriously only takes 5 minutes. It's as simple as just jumping on iTunes today, clicking on it, rating it 5 stars, and leaving a little bit extra. You don't have to be quite as clever as Master Matt, but it's fun when you are, for sure. So
yes. All right, Eve, how do people get involved with the show outside of those two?
You can hang with us in Discord. That's super fun. It's,
brand new Discord server.
I downloaded it like in 2 seconds on my iPhone. There are other ways that you can get it as well, but it's a fun way to be able to keep in touch with us and other cool Hearthstone people as well. That doesn't require you to give a lot of personal information, so
yeah,
make you feel safe. Chat with us on Twitter. I always respond to any chats that I get or messages. Support us on Patreon and play Hearthstone with us.
Yeah, and then Joe, there's a few more things under there that you could run our viewers through about emails and coaching sessions. We want to inform the listeners about that.
Yeah, so if you want, you can request one of us to make you better at Hearthstone. No guarantees on that.
We'll make you be
unless
better.
Joe's coaching you, and then maybe.
Maybe. You can request a collection coaching session, so we'll look through your collection, tell you what cards are good, what cards are bad, what cards you should dust, what cards you should craft, things of that nature. That'll happen after Stand. There's no point doing that now, unfortunately. And then, email us stuff. We read all the emails, obviously, and yeah.
We love getting emails. Do not stop sending the emails. Even if you've already sent one, you can send another one.
Yep.
You're not capped at one email.
Absolutely. And we have all of our links to all of our locations, whether that be Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, Twitch, website, Discord, iTunes, RSS, Stitcher, and our esports hero code for 5,000 coins are all in the show notes online. We won't waste your time anymore. So, Andrew, where can the lovely viewers find you?
Andrew's living on Twitter, BinacaFreak on YouTube, Andrew's live number 1973. Not wasting time.
Boom! Eve, what about you?
I feel bad. On Twitter at Finnovar, FHINNOVARR. On Twitch is Evemartyn. On Battle.net, we're kind of in the same position in Destiny right now where we're waiting for the next content patch. So just like hanging around, running Crucible matches, waiting.
Everybody's got spring fever.
Give us some more content, damn it.
Joe, what about you, man?
I'm on Twitter at Hamboy12_HS. I'm literally like always on Twitter. So if you like Twitter, like just bother
if you like complaining about Druid too, you have
so much.
You have an advocate.
And then I'm on Twitch at Hamboy12, but I don't use that, so don't waste your time with that. And then if you want Battle.net, tweet me. Somebody actually tweeted me last week and asked for my Battle.net.
Yeah.
I added them the other day. So
awesome.
If I add you that way, you might want to like send me a message and remind me like why I added you before you like just randomly start a conversation with me, or I might get really confused. But yeah, feel free to do that.
Listen to the show, Joe.
That's great.
But feel free to do that. I'll be happy to like chat with you about Hearthstone, do that coaching stuff or whatever. So
sweet.
Yeah,
one of those. You're one of the people who calls it Hearthstone.
I switched between the two, to be honest. I don't know why. It's just whatever comes out.
Cool. Hey, cool.
All right, you guys can find me. I put my Battle.net in the show notes, but please message me on Twitter at NotRob or on Instagram at NotRob. And you can find my digital online portfolio at NotRobMedia on Facebook. I just created a brand new brand because, drumroll please, I am starting at the end of this month a Overwatch podcast with Andres from Hearthaholics.
Hey-o.
And I'll send a...
rubbing it in our faces that he's in the beta.
In the beta. But yeah, we're going to do a strategy/teaching strategy Overwatch podcast called Omnic Lab. And it's really, really cool. Nice. We came up with the name, and the brand is really cool. For those of you on the live stream or watching video, I will show you the background on my phone because that's the brand. Boom. So
I think it looks awesome.
It looks dope. Yeah. So, and not just because I made it, but that's probably
on PS4. Will you invite me on the show so I can tell you how it feels on the PS4?
Yes, I can tell you how good you are with an aimbot on PS4.
Oh,
burn! You can find me streaming on the show at NotRobMay on Twitch. So twitch.tv/NotRobMay. And anytime I'm streaming Hearthstone, that's not the show. It's there too. You can have me on Steam. It's Sir Twick. If you want to play Rocket League, you have to basically beat me into a pulp of submission to get me on Steam right now because I'm really enjoying Fire Emblem Fates and Overwatch. So good luck to you on that. Thank you guys for visiting Exodar, and parting is such sweet sorrow. We'll guys see you guys next week. And don't forget the words of Prophet Velen. If I can click it.
Not all who wander are lost.
I'm so good with this. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Adios.
Bye.
Later.
Take this time to consider your past deeds.
Stop asking questions. You had your chance.
I was just reading.
Did I miss it?
What a way to end the show.
She did miss it.
I was just reading Hippie Corpo in the chat saying, I'll ask a collection coaching session the first day of the expansion, and I'll blame you guys if you give me bad advice.
And that's where we're going to stop the recording.